Part 2. In the Village of Mabanta. Chapter 14. Page 63. Okonkwo was well received by his mother's kinsmen in Mabanta. The old man who received him was his mother's younger brother, now the eldest member of that family. His name was Uchendu, and it was he who had received Okonkwo's mother 30 years before, when she had been brought home from Umuofia to be buried with her people. Okonkwo was only a boy then, and Uchendu still remembered him crying the traditional farewell, "Mother, mother, mother is going." Today, Okonkwo is taking his family of 3 wives and their children to seek refuge in his motherland. As soon as Uchendu saw him with his sad and weary company, he guessed what had happened and asked no questions. It was not until the following day that Okonkwo told him the full story. The old man listened silently to the end and said with some relief, "It is a female crime." Okonkwo was given a plot of ground on which to build his compound and 2 or 3 pieces of land on which to farm during the coming planting season. And with the help of his mother's kinsmen, he built a hut for himself and 3 huts for his wives. Each of Uchendu's 5 sons gave 300 seed yams to enable their cousin to plant a farm. At last the rain came. It was sudden and tremendous. All the grass had long been scorched brown, and the sands felt like live coals to the feet. Then came the clap of thunder. It was an angry and thirsty clap, unlike the liquid rambling of this rainy season. A mighty wind arose and filled the air with dust. Palm trees swayed as the wind combed their leaves into flying crests. And when the rain finally came, it was in large, solid drops of frozen water the people called the nuts of the water of heaven. They were hard and painful on the body as they fell, yet young people ran about happily picking up the cold nuts and throwing them into their mouths to melt. The earth quickly came to life, and the birds in the forest chirped merrily. A vague scent of life and green vegetation was in the air, and as the rain began to fall more quietly, in smaller liquid drops, children sought shelter, and all were happy, refreshed, and thankful. Okonkwo and his family worked very hard to plant a new farm, but it was like beginning life anew. Work no longer had the pleasure it used to have, and when there was no work to do, he sat in a silent half-sleep. His life had been ruled by a great passion, to become one of the lords of the clan. He had all but achieved it. Then everything had been broken. He had been cast out of his clan like a fish onto a dry, sandy beach. Clearly, his chi was not meant for great things. A man could not rise beyond the destiny of his chi. The saying of the elders was not true, that if a man said yes, his chi said yes. Here was a man whose chi said no, despite his saying yes. The old man, Uchendu, saw clearly that Okonkwo had yielded to despair, and he was greatly troubled. He would speak to him after the upcoming marriage ceremony. The youngest of Uchendu's 5 sons, Amikwu, was marrying a new wife. The bride price had been paid. All but the last ceremony had been performed. Amikwu and his people had taken palm wine to the bride's kinsmen about 2 moons before Okonkwo's arrival in Mabanta. So it was time for the final ceremony. The daughters of the family were all there, some of them having come a long way from their homes in distant villages. Uchendu's eldest daughter had come from Obodo, nearly half a day away. It was a full gathering of the family, in the same way as they would meet if a death had occurred in the family. And there were 22 of them. They sat in a big circle on the ground, and the bride sat in the center, with a hen in her right hand. Uchendu sat by her, holding the ancestral staff of the family. Others stood outside the circle watching. Uchendu's eldest daughter, Njidi, asked the questions. "Remember, if you do not answer truthfully, you will suffer or even die at childbirth," she began. "How many men have you been with since my brother first said he wanted to marry you?" "None," she answered simply. "Swear on this staff of my father's," said Uchendu. And she did. Uchendu took the hen from her, slit its throat with a sharp knife, and allowed some of the blood to fall on his ancestral staff. And from that day, Imuko took the young bride to his hut, and she became his wife. On the second day, Uchendu called together his sons and daughters and his nephew, Okonkwo. Uchendu pulled gently at his gray beard and gnashed his teeth. He began to speak quietly, picking his words with great care. "It is Okonkwo that I primarily wish to speak to," he began. "But I want all of you to note what I am going to say. Why is Okonkwo with us today? This is not his clan. He does not belong here. He is in exile, condemned for 7 years to live in a strange land. So he is bowed with grief. But there's just one question I would like to ask him. Can you tell me, Okonkwo, why one of the commonest names we give our children is Nneka, or Mother is Supreme? We all know a man is the head of the family and his wives do his bidding. A child belongs to his father and his family, and not to its mother and her family. Yet we say Nneka, Mother is Supreme. Why is that?" And there was silence. "I want Okonkwo to answer me," said Uchendu. "I do not know the answer," Okonkwo replied. "You do not know the answer. So you see, you are a child. You have many wives and children, more children than I have. You are a great man in your clan. But you are still a child, my child. Listen to me, and I shall tell you. But there is one more question I shall ask you. Why is it that when a woman dies, she is taken home to be buried with her own kinsmen?" And Okonkwo shook his head. "He does not know that either," said Uchendu. "And yet he is full of sorrow because he has come to live in his motherland for a few years." He turned to his sons and daughters. "Can you answer my question?" And they all shook their heads. "Listen to me," he said. "It's true that a child belongs to its father. But when a father beats its child, it seeks sympathy in its mother's hut. A man belongs to his fatherland when things are good and life is sweet. But when there is sorrow, he finds refuge in his motherland. That is why we say that the mother is supreme. Your mother is there to protect you. Is it right that you, Okonkwo, should bring to your mother a heavy heart and refuse to be comforted? Be careful, or you may displease the dead." He paused for a long while. "These are now your kinsmen," and he waved at his sons and daughters. "You think you are the greatest sufferer in the world? Do you know men are sometimes banished for life? I had 6 wives once. I have none now except that young girl. Do you know how many children I have buried? 22. I did not hang myself. If you think you are the greatest sufferer in the world, ask my daughter, Akwini, how many twins she has borne and thrown away. I have no more to say to you."